Skip is one of the most respected figures in bodybuilding, an elite coach, founder of the legendary Intense Muscle Forum, and the creator of controversial Skiploading nutrition strategy Used to Get Lean.
First, I want to be very clear that Skiploading is not eating a bunch of shit and getting fat. And I'm not saying that you said that, but it could have been inferred that that's what it is. I'll never be a professional bodybuilder, but I am a professional drug user. I have used a lot of shit for a lot of years, to the point where there are peers of mine who have arguably used the same, if not less, and I'm outliving them, and that's uncomfortable. Okay, well, I feel a little bit of hunger. I think the dose needs to go up. It's like, what? This is not why we're using this. This is not to eliminate hunger. And we're eliminating or minimizing a very important signal while we're trying to get lean. It seems on the surface to be a good idea. When you start digging a little deeper, it's not a very good idea.
Well, hello, man.
Thank you for having me on. I'm one with the accent, right? Everyone listening is probably like, guys, that's an American accent. But to me, you have the accent.
Yeah, I definitely have the accent because I'm from Poland. So
Yep.
actually, my English is very bad, and you're gonna be like probably the witness of that during the podcast, because there's gonna be a time when I'm gonna just silence for like 15 minutes and trying to figure it out what I wanted to say. But other than that, everyone should be probably fine.
I think it's good. I can understand what you're saying, so I'm good.
You are the one who delivers the information, so I'm okay with that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So I am not really like sure if you're familiar with my formula of the podcast, because this is like a way of me presenting the different approaches from the coaches. The idea from the podcast comes from the like obvious thing in a bodybuilding, that there's probably like a million ways of skin a cat.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, the results are like what we are looking for. So who really cares? So there's like a couple hundred of thousands, if not the millions, coaches out there right now. It's probably more coaches than competitors. So
More than we need, we'll say.
yeah. So for the athletes, it's really like they can choose like who like resonates the best with them.
Mhm.
So this is like, it's gonna be your time to present how you're doing thing your way. Obviously, there's gonna be like different approaches for different situations, but I am trying to create some sort of scenario for you that I am gonna be your new client that says like I'm weighing about 102 kilos, so it's gonna be around probably like 230,
25, 30.
25 to 30, something like that. And we wanted to move my like skinny ass to the open class. So I am just finished my competitive season, and I'm done something like health phase or whatever the smart guys I like to call it nowadays. But you just saw my blood works, and everything is better than fine, and I am just basically lean and ready to go into the off season. So what would be the first thing you would like to get out of me at the beginning of our cooperations, and what would you like to set up at the beginning, knowing that I am gonna need to probably build a shit ton of muscle if I wanted to be competitive in the open category?
The first thing I'm going to get from you is a really big payment.
That's obvious. I'm already like take a call for, and the bank says that I am allowed to borrow some money from them. So we are set on that.
Okay, we're good to go then. We've got that covered and out of the way. I'm probably gonna look, and I think people will want to go to the gear first. They're probably like, what's he gonna tell him to take? But I'm not gonna go there. That's not usually where I'm gonna go. Go ahead. If you want to inject, go ahead.
Yeah. There, I would like to ask you the question in regards to training, then the diet,
Hmm.
then the amount of protein, carbs, fats, then probably rotation, the diet mistakes you saw, the cheat meals, mini cuts, cardio. I would like to go like in some sort of structure,
Sure.
but
Okay.
at the beginning, you probably wanted to know a little bit about myself. Like, I don't know, what would you like to know? Maybe how I trained before, maybe like an
Yeah.
injury history,
Yeah. I
or
need to know what
anything
that
that you need to
past is.
assess.
I
Yeah.
need to know what that past looks like. So I need a lot of information. And let me be clear on something. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm crapping on you or the listeners, but I'm certainly not going to like just throw out this. Yeah. I'm going to give information on what I would do as far as digging into some, but I'm not laying out a plan.
Yeah.
I'll explain where I would go and stuff like that. But I would definitely start with, I got to get all this information from the past. What have you done in the past that has worked and has not worked? There's a lot of questions. My clients, any clients that have worked with me, listening to this, they're like, yeah, there's a million questions. There's the onboarding information, but then there's a couple days of getting our ducks in a row. And I'm following up with a lot of questions. So I need to know what has worked, what you've done, what you've tried, what the outcome has been, how long you've been on the current diet, what has the response been, how long you've been training this particular style of training, and what has that response been. It matters moving forward what you have done in the past. This is the individual component of every single client. If it were as easy as saying, well, Skip has this, and I know this is not what you're saying, but Skip has this specific plan. If you do it, it'll work and it'll work great for you. It just doesn't work that way. I know you know that. The vast majority of the listeners know that, but there are some people who don't. And that's why sometimes even putting out, I put out my information, what I'm doing currently. I'll have 10 of my clients hit me up in 2 days going, well, you were talking about this, so I started doing that. We didn't have that conversation. I was putting out the information of what I was doing. And a lot of what I do, I maybe haven't done with clients before. I might be trialing things, experimenting. That's how I got known in the industry to begin with anyway. I kind of took those things that were accepted and known, and I started challenging them. Started thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. And our industry is really bad for accepting rules and then not even questioning them. Maybe not today, but back in the day, I've been doing this for a long time. So 20, 25 years ago, there were just those things that were accepted. And I'm thinking, this just doesn't make sense. Some of them were true. Some of them weren't. Actually, a lot of them weren't. So there's a lot of trial and experimentation on my end. And people say, well, I want to jump on board and I want to try that. So I would go with obviously the past, and this is everything. This is everything from supplementation to training to diet. What's going on in your life as far as relationships? Some people be like, well, that's, it's none of your business. You're a trainer. I think it should be. Are you stressed? Are you dealing with career issues? Do you have problems at work? Do you have financial issues? Because if you're dealing with a lot of stress, you're not sleeping well. How are your gains? How are you going to progress optimally when you're dealing with fluctuating hormone levels? You mess with one hormone, you got 7 over here that are being indirectly impacted as well. So insulin's related to testosterone, which is related to estrogen, which is related to ghrelin leptin, which is related, we're taking all these GLPs now. That's messing everything up. Not everything up, but I've got strong opinions
Yeah.
within the last month or so on that. And
On the
yes.
professional muscle, when I said that I'm gonna have you on the podcast, first comment was ask him about the Retta.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting a
So
lot of pushback on that because there are so many people who are married to this. When I first used it 18, 19 months ago, I expected that I was just going to use it, check the box. See, I don't have clients use something or do something that I haven't done before. The cool thing about being old and around for a long time is I have done just about everything. So whether it be a combination of gear or using things and style of training, dieting, I'm all over the place with dieting. That's how skiploading came to be. So there's a lot of out of the box stuff. When it comes to Retta, I thought I'll check the box. It's going to suck. It's going to be another peptide that's like, meh. And I'm like, wow, this is really good stuff. And Then after time, I started seeing issues with it. I'm like, no, it's just great. But it's kind of like a frog in boiling water, that analogy. If the water's already boiling, you throw the frog in there, we know what happens. But if you slowly heat it up, the frog doesn't know, and you're really not seeing everything that's going on around you. And I think that's what we're starting to see with Retta. I don't know if you want to go down that rabbit hole, but I would love to. So it's up to
Yeah.
you.
Today we're going to talk about the off season, but I'm definitely going to ask you about the Retta later in the podcast. So let's assess some things. Let's assess theoretically that I not theoretically because I am, but I am happily married with a beautiful girl that I'm so happy about that. I have my own house right now. I have a great dog, the greatest probably on the earth. Uh, my stress levels are almost non-existent. I have the best job on the planet because I'm just sitting in front of my computer and answer and talks about the bodybuilding with the guys that are passionate about it, like on a daily. So what else could you do like better than this? And right now we know that I need to build a shit ton of muscle, and let's says that my digestion is fine, which is lie. My my chest is shit, which is true. My shoulder is fucked, which is true. My probably back are stuck, which is true. And my hamstring are needing definitely some like love because they are definitely not matching my outrageous quads, which is like because right now my quads almost disappear because of my health problems, but doesn't matter. But let's say that you know everything about me in that regards, and just knowing that, how do you structure my like workouts at the beginning, knowing that like for the last let's say 7 years I was doing like a low volume, high intensity style of training, doing like top and a back of set, like English style of workouts, and focusing definitely a lot on gaining as much strength as possible. And I was in back in the days, just barely can feel my chest. Right now, it's definitely a lot better. Like I can literally down like three stats and my chest are done for the day. So knowing all of that, how would you structure my training?
Well, I hear you saying that your training isn't going very well. It's not terribly productive at this point, right?
It's hard to say. I build that shit ton of muscle on that, but my chest are shit, my back are
Okay,
shit, and my
what about just the
shoulders.
last year? Yeah, I mean, you've been doing it. You've been training for what'd you say? You've been doing this style of training for 6, 7 years, I think you said.
Like 7 years, yeah,
Okay,
something like
so
that.
let's forget about the 6 or 7 years. What has happened in the last year? Just progress in the last year. Is it meh?
Hard to say because the amount of breaks I need to take because of my shoulder probably ruin it. So probably,
Okay, let's go with the shoulder. How did the shoulder happen? Training?
yeah, definitely,
Okay,
definitely.
then there's a good reason because it's either the training or the way that you're reading the training that you're not adjusting to that feedback. That I mean, your shoulder didn't come out of nowhere. I'm
Yeah,
sure that there were signs, yeah, this isn't good, and you're like, well, I got to train today. There's number one problem. And
yeah.
here's the thing: how old are you?
32 almost.
Okay, so you're young, I'm old. So I've got like 42 years of training. So I'm going to say this in my wisdom. I have been where you have been. I've been through all that where it's like, you know what? I can train. I've got a few aches and pains. I got a little bit of itis. I call it old man itis because inflammation or inflammatory responses for elbows and knees and stuff, that's a overwork situation. And the reason it's old man is because our generation we're an outwork generation. The next generation is arguably smarter, your generation, because not to say that the work ethic isn't there, but you guys are doing less total work. There's more rest. And here's the thing, arguably, you're more successful. because recovery isn't an issue. We're stepping up to that line constantly. And again, these are blanket statements. It's not everybody. Not everybody in your generation is, lazy or, that type of shit. I don't want to sound like get off my lawn type of thing where our generation is perfect. We got a lot we done wrong. And one of them is overworking. And that's where the itis comes in. So at some point, you're doing too much work. You're not listening to your feedback. You're like, well, I'm young. I'll get around it. I could get around it when I was younger too. Something might hurt a few weeks later. I haven't changed much of anything, but it just went away. That doesn't happen at some point, and you may be there. It isn't as much our biological age or our chronological age. It's how many years we've been training. If you're 50, but you've only been training for 5 years, as far as I'm concerned, you might as well be 30 from a training standpoint. If you're 50 and you've been training for 30 years, your ass is old. Those joints are beat up. Everything is, you probably have a couple injuries. You might have lower back issues, that type of thing, things that you're working around. All that is important. Number one, the feedback. I mean, if you're not able, not just you, but anybody, myself, doesn't matter. If you're not able to honestly assess feedback, then you're arguably the deck is stacked against you, because then you're going to take those risks and you're not going to listen. You're going to keep pushing. So you're that much more vulnerable to the injuries or the itis or all these nagging type of issues. And look, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad injury. It can just be nagging shit that holds you back. And sometimes it can be as simple as, you know what, my shoulders bother me when I bench. You know what? I don't know that bodybuilders need to be benching all that much anyway. This is a powerlifting move. It's a move away from point A to point B. I don't want to sound, again, with the blanket statements, making everything black and white. But the vast majority of bodybuilders from a hypertrophy standpoint don't need to be doing deads. They don't need to squat. They don't need to bench press. And I know the guys on professional muscle, especially the old heads, are like, oh, that's blasphemous. That Skip, he's gone to the other side. That type of thing. But after years of doing things, and it's not just me, look at the bodybuilders coming up. They're not pulling deads. Phil didn't pull deads. He might have for a picture twice in his life. He didn't squat a lot. I trained alongside. He didn't squat a lot, hardly at all. Again, probably for pictures. So a lot of these big movements, they have their place in a strength phase. You can arguably do them in a bodybuilding type of, not scenario, but almost like a bodybuilder method. There's a bodybuilding deadlift and there's a powerlifting deadlift. There's a bodybuilding squat and there's a powerlifting squat. But we have so much advancement in the technology for equipment these days. I'm not saying that everybody should be training on machines, but there's a lot of variety for a lot of different angles, and it keeps you or helps you to stay injury-free without having to go with these arguably antiquated movements that, well, Franco did them, so we must do them. Franco didn't have many options. He was a power lifter or a power bodybuilder, if you want to call it that, which I think we know now is if you're a power builder or a power bodybuilder, you're going to deal with a lot of injuries too. So the hypertrophy, we want to focus on hypertrophy. We want to use that weight versus lifting the weight. It's not from point A to point B. It's we're using it. And that doesn't necessarily mean maxing out poundages. I hate to use Jay Cutler as an example because he's obviously a genetic freak. But you got Jay Cutler, who rarely trained to failure, became a pretty good bodybuilder. Yes, there's a genetic component, but there are plenty of people who, I'm pulling back myself from failure. And I'm 56 years old. I've been training for 42 years. I'm seeing progress now where I go, wow, I haven't seen those numbers on leg curls in a long time. All because I'm pulling back instead of training to failure. I started to see my poundages just decreasing slowly over time. So taking a better look at the training, your situation with all those injuries, being able to assess the feedback, changing exercises that arguably just aren't benefiting you as much. They may have worked well for that base, the foundation, the strength. That's great. Now move into more bodybuilding type exercises, and let's approach the training from the standpoint of, I want to create as much stress on the working muscle as possible. That does not necessarily mean it needs to be the heaviest weight. Mechanical tension. So, and I'm not a studies guy. I'm just not. I would rather go, you know what? I'd rather listen to guys who've trained for a long time, not just me or, I don't have the last word, but a lot of people who've trained for a long time. I want to hear from them. The studies are just so incredibly limited, but here's the catch. lot of the studies are backing up what the guys are saying that have been in this game for a long time. That matters. So I was shocked by this, if I'm being honest. I was shocked that there is arguably the same potential for growth, not training to failure, as there is to failure. I didn't like it because I want to work hard. I want to be able to walk out of the gym and go, I didn't have anything left. But at the end of the day, that's a frying situation of the CNS. It tends to just push you down. You're constantly on that edge of overtraining. And if you're on that edge of overtraining, you're on the edge of potential injury as well. So if there is growth, and I do believe that there is, the growth potential, staying 1 or 2 RIR, God, I hate that, but reps in reserve, because we all know what it means. Wow, we can train hard, not as hard, but we can train hard. We can leave without feeling destroyed, leave the gym without feeling destroyed. Our CNS isn't overworked. We're less likely to overtrain, and the risk of injury is lower. I don't know. Seems pretty logical. And at the end of the day, if it makes sense, okay, cool. If it's nonsensical, we probably need to shelf that. So again, I'm talking more methodology and ideology than I am do specifically this thing and then come back and check, which I would be doing with clients. But I'm also very limited. I mean, you gave me some information on your background. We're talking 3, 4, 5 minutes of that versus me digging in and having a back and forth with a client that may take 2 or 3 days. I mean, I start a plan. It typically takes me 4 or 5 days before I really have that plan up and running. And we can say, okay, now let's get our ducks in a row for the diet and everything. I won't start a consult typically for the first week after I get that plan started, just so that everything is ready to go. I don't feel rushed. The client doesn't feel rushed. And then we can hit the ground running in 5 to 7 days.
Yeah, but I feel like we all like get the feeling of how to structure it. So probably you were more focusing on like a proper execution and just like focusing on the specific muscle that needs the a little bit more attention, rather than just going after like adding the poundages on for sake of adding the poundages. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay.
Look, if you can take a weight and make that weight feel heavy based on the stress on the muscle, and I'm kind of going over my pecs here because visually that's what you can see. I could have rubbed my quads, but you wouldn't have seen that. The point is creating as much stress, as much mechanical tension. And again, mechanical tension, if you ask 10 people in the industry, 9.5 of them will say, oh, that just means, put as much weight on that muscle as possible. I don't believe that. Tension, make that muscle work as hard as possible without having to rely on maximum poundage. Because I mean, look, I'm going to irritate a lot of people with things that I say, but if they think about it, it makes sense. I'm going to say that training to failure in the 5, 6, 7 rep range is not as difficult as training to failure in the 12, 15, and especially when it comes to legs, 20 rep range. I know myself, and I'm not the only one. I got a ton of growth from Widowmaker sets. And I think a lot of people did. A lot of people listen. They'll be like, oh, DC, yeah, I made great progress on it. What is that? Low volume, high intensity, but it wasn't in that lower rep range. The rest pause component of it. I mean, let's be fair. If you're doing 6, 7, and you're resting and you're doing 3 or 4, I mean, at the end of the day, that's not a 6 or 7 rep set. That's a 12, 10, 15 rep set with pauses in between. Yes, you're maximizing the strength component of it. I'm not going to go against DC because I have a lot of respect for him. If it was my method, I don't know that I would have relied as much on the strength component. But at the end of the day, no one's going to deny that in the early years of someone training, if you're focused on strength increases with compound exercises, you're going to grow. Just not going to grow in perpetuity. There comes a point where you're going to max out that strength, or you're going to get that level of strength to the point where now you're gambling with injuries when you don't necessarily have to. If it was all about just getting stronger and that would make you bigger, then I guess we'd have to put up with the injuries. But we're finding out that that's not the case. And we see it all the time. Everybody listening, yourself included, I've seen wiry kids squat 365, 315 for sets of 8 to 10. And you go, man, those are pretty solid. They're pretty well controlled, but that's not a big dude. So, you know, I know I've gone from 315 to benching 365, 405 and went, I don't know if my chest is any better. I know my arms were bigger when I didn't train them as heavy. And I think there are people listening who could go, wow, yeah, that might have. So, you know, we have other things. We have time under tension. I think that is incredibly underrated when it comes to growth. And it fits the bodybuilding hypertrophy style of training where you're increasing the stress as much as possible. Arguably, it can still be considered progressive overload. But when we talk about progressive overload, 99% of us are thinking heavier weight or more reps at the same weight. We're not thinking, oh, longer time under tension. So
Yeah,
how do you
yeah,
define, you know?
I'm definitely agreeing with you, and I will need to explain myself that I am no longer training about that, and it was probably never just chasing after the maybe at the beginning this was just chasing after the poundages, but like I do believe, and I've always explained to my clients, for example, that there's a two ways of the like a weightlifting. There's a powerlifting way and then bodybuilding way, because the power lifters are gonna focusing more on the external like tension, and the bodybuilders are focusing on internal tension. So the goal for the power lifter is to use as much muscle as possible and make it as light as possible. And the bodybuilders are doing just the opposite. So
I agree.
using the less you can use and make it as hard as possible. So this is like the biggest difference when it comes to the training as a bodybuilder and as a power lifter. And I'm totally agreeing with you. And after a lot of injuries and a lot of like years, maybe not as much as you under the bar, I've get to that like in a harsh way. Like all of the bodybuilders, I think that's we are just different kind of people, because I do believe that right now it is a little bit easier to learn from the mistakes of the others. But
Sure.
back in the days, I, for example, just reading everything that I can find in like all of the forums, all of the Dante stuff, all of like your stuff, all of the like whole professional muscle, and then I go to the gym and just yeah, they have a right, but that's isn't about me. I'm
Mhm.
different.
Yeah.
So
But
so yeah.
and you're weighing out, you know, I can, because I've been around for so long. I can weigh out what it was like when I started in the 80s, and there was literally nothing outside. I mean, Flex Magazine didn't start until like 85 or 86. And it was like this then. It was ridiculous. There wasn't a lot of information there, but I was going to read it cover to cover. It's the only thing I had outside of the, you know, Arnold's Encyclopedia, I guess. And there were other things. I mean, people are going to call me out. There was, you know, obviously Bob Kennedy. There were things out there, but the point is it was incredibly limited to what we have now as far as information at our fingertips. And I often wonder which one is better, because you've got a ton of information now if you're just getting into bodybuilding. And yet I refer to it as, and same with the online training community, is this giant sea of turds. You have all this information, but you're standing and you're knee deep in shit, and you're looking around and you don't know where to go. You don't know who knows what they're talking about. And people tend to say, well, you know, he's got a lot of followers. He's got 400,000 followers. He must know what he's talking about. That there's online training, and then there's being a good social, you know, being a good influencer, and they're rarely connected. So, you know, I know when I mentor coaches, I always tell them you want to be a 90% coach and a 10% influencer. You need to know your shit, and you need to be well respected. And there's a lot more that goes with it than that. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it goes from trust to integrity to your character and everything. And people will say, well, that doesn't matter. Well, it does if they're going to send you $2,000, $5,000, and they don't know you and they've never met you. There is a level of trust. And there's a trust that they know the service that you're providing is worth what they're paying and what they're investing, not just in the money, but the time and the sacrifice and everything else. So there's a lot to unwrap there. The point is which one is better? And I don't know which one is better. I want to go with what I came up in, because I had to learn and get out of the box and challenge all those things that I was told and find out for me what worked and what didn't, and who was full of shit and who wasn't. Because the biggest guy in the gym doesn't necessarily have all the knowledge or the most knowledge. I go back and I think of a guy in particular. I don't need to mention his name because no one will know who he is outside of Michigan, but he was just a real squeaky voice and super most jack guy I've ever seen in my life. And I just thought, man, I'm gonna listen to him. And he was just telling me these things. And I remember thinking at the time, and not to be a douchebag kid, but I was like, I don't know, that doesn't make sense. And then being able to take that, and I remember a lot of things he said. I mean, it was like it was yesterday. And then fast forward to now where we have all this information. I just think it would be very difficult to sift through all that information to find out what is bullshit, what isn't, and what's kind of in the middle. And I think that's where the message boards came into play. I think the message boards still to this day, I want to sound like an old guy, but I'm gonna. That was just the height of knowledge as far as I was concerned, because it brought all these people who were doing their own experiment. You know, this bro science thing makes me laugh. Like it's this negative connotation. And it doesn't have to be. It depends on who the bro is. Because at the end of the day, we're all doing our own little science experiment. We're controlling as many variables as we can. And this is an ongoing science project. And then you get all those people together in a message board format, and we're all exchanging ideas and we're challenging each other in that bro community that everybody wants to be a part of. You build arguably a reputation. You build whether you have knowledge or not, or whether you're stupid. And then we open it up to social media, and then it's just a free for all for anybody to say whatever they want. There's no debate. There's very little discourse, because if I don't like what you're saying and you're going to argue with me, I'm just going to block you, and I don't have to deal with you. Was not a big fan of Adam McVeigh back in the day. That might piss people off too, especially because he's passed, but I'm just being honest. But one thing he did say that I didn't agree with him at the time is social media being an echo chamber. But he was right. Because if you literally post something and everybody goes, "Oh, you're so smart, you're a super genius, oh my God." And if somebody says something you don't know what you're talking about, you just get rid of them. You couldn't do that in the message board era.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it. You had to deal with that. You had to battle. It's like the rap battle type. You know, you just get in there and you're fighting every day to, I don't know, to you're fighting for respect, that your opinions and your experience or knowledge is respected, is that people see value in it. And we just sift through everything and we put the good stuff over here, and we just kind of slide the dumbasses over here, and they're relegated to this part of the internet or this part of the message board. And we came up with a lot of really good shit. And here's the cool thing. Years later, the vast majority of that knowledge and the opinions that we had as a community, they were pretty solid. Very few of those have been shot down. Very few.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I just realized that Ian Valier is probably still living in those times, because he's arguing with everyone on social media.
There are outliers, there are exceptions, but you get what I'm saying. It's, you know, we have the Fitzwaters who are still going to, run off at the mouth and do their own thing and that sort of thing. But
so let's move on to the diet, because this is like probably is going to be a tricky one, because you are known from your Skiploading. So probably those who are not watching those like almost or even past an hour video, you like describing everything in details on your YouTube channel, still thinks that Skiploading is basically eating a shit ton of crap and getting as fat as you physically can. So when it comes to the guy like me, so the guy who just needs to build a shit ton of muscle, would you like to keep me very lean during the off season, or you'll be fine with me getting a little bit more chubby, because we need to build as much muscle as possible, so maybe adding like a 50, 16, 80 pounds on top of my current weights are the way.
Well, first, I want to be very clear that Skiploading is not eating a bunch of shit and getting fat. And I'm not saying that you said that, but it could have been inferred that that's what it is. And the reason I say that is because to this day, there are still a lot of people who think that. And I think what has happened is because I'm the last generation, the new generation. I just assumed that I had talked about Skiploading so much in the early days that I was sick of talking about it, and I figured people were sick about hearing it or sick of hearing it. When in reality, what has happened is new generations come in, and then they have their own, when they hear about it, and not everybody has heard about it, which I was surprised by. I just assumed everybody knew about it. But the people who had heard about it, it was basically portrayed to them that it was just throwing down a bunch of garbage food, and it was kind of a free-for-all type of thing. And that just wasn't the case. The start, it absolutely was. But that was 25 years ago. I mean, processes evolve over time. I mean, it started as shit loading with Zilla. And to this day, I'm going to continue to say this. I just want to meet the guy one day. I just want to be able to shake the guy's hand, because without him, I'm going to be honest, I don't think anybody know who I was. It was Skiploading who pushed me to the forefront and got me the attention, and arguably made me popular in the message board days.
Yeah, I just mentioned it just because today I've watched the recent episode of the Transparent podcast with you, and you're actually talking about this guy. He made you like kind of famous in a bad way, because like we both know how the social media works, so people just follow what they hear. But
you're talking about about Chris Williamson. I make no bones about saying there's a cool story after that, though. He actually bumped into one of my clients who was shredded as in Austin, Texas. And Chris said to my client, "Wow, you're just insane. How did you do that?" And he literally said, "Skiploading." And he said Chris was just like, well, and my client said, I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, you bashed on this method on your show a few times, but this is the result of doing. And he said, well, that's not what I was saying. I just really didn't understand it. And I admitted that I didn't do it right, which he did admit that he didn't do it right. That was part of the issue that I had with it. You're talking to 2 million subscribers, and you're going to say that it doesn't work after you admit that you didn't do it right. I'm like, I don't remember this guy ever contacting me to work with me, but then to say something like that to me, I just think things like that are arguably, they're irresponsible. At the very least, they're unfair. And then I'm like, I guess just have me on. If you want to be fair, have me on to explain my side of it. It went further because he had Sam Sulik on. And Sam, I don't know if he knows what skiploading is, but he was doing a version of it, right? And has been successful with it. And he had made a comment to Sam that was something negative about skiploading, and Sam kind of looked away and went, I don't know. I don't see an issue with it. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said. Yeah. So we tried to get Sam on. Well, good luck getting Sam on your podcast. Your email, your message kind of goes down with the other 100,000 that are in there, and they kind of get lost. So I didn't think he'd come on, but it would have been nice if he just would have put, okay, wait, this is skiploading. And you never know. You have to ask, right? You never know. You're probably going to get a no, but you got to ask. But at the end of the day, look, I don't want guys. Look, if you got to gain 80 pounds of fat to grow, this isn't your jam. You need to take up badminton or shuffleboard or something. I don't know. My point is this: there are outliers. There are some people that do have to gain a lot of excess weight to be able to gain muscle. But I'm telling you, it's a very, very small percentage. You want to stay as lean as you can. For like insulin sensitivity is a very good reason. If you're insulin sensitive, it's going to be so much easier to get leaner, and it's going to be so much easier to add muscle. So whether you're dieting, and typically when you're dieting, you're going to be more insulin sensitive. But as long as you're insulin sensitive, gaining or lose, you're in a pretty good environment to be able to progress well. When body fat levels are up, that makes that difficult to do. Yes, we have compounds today that are being overused that can help us with insulin sensitivity, with a whole bunch of other side stuff, but I'll wait till we get to that topic. Stay as lean as you can. Doesn't mean shredded, but stay as lean as you can and still be able to progress well. It's twofold. You keep insulin sensitivity to arguably help with adding muscle, and at the same time, you don't have to diet off 60, 70, 80 pounds. I mean, I had my buddy, I always bring his name up, Kenneth Banks. He's awesome. He would go 80 to 100 pounds in the off season, wouldn't work with me in the off season, come to me for prep. And I'm like, bro, like again, like, holy shit. And we'd pull 90, 100 pounds off him, and he'd look ridiculous. I almost said retarded, but I'm working better on this politically correct terminology. Okay. I'm a work in progress, but he would look ridiculous. But it's like, why do you have to stress me out for 20 weeks, 22 weeks, maybe 24 if you come to me at 100 pounds over, and stress yourself out at the same time? It just makes the process of getting leaner so much more. He was lucky because he actually held on to muscle and was growing, which is funny. He was growing into his prep. Why? Because he was probably far more insulin sensitive as he was dieting and coming down in body fat. So there's another reason there. A lot of people can grow. Here's what people can't do. A lot of people can grow when they're staying lean. What they struggle with is the all-consuming routine and structure of the diet. If you're really invested in bodybuilding and you want to get the most out of it, your off season should look like a prep. Not calories, but the same foods, the same timing when it comes to meals, the same focus on your training and everything. It should just be this prep in perpetuity, but you're taking in higher calories. All the same foods, still clean. You have your high carb days or your skip load or your refeed or your cheat meal, however you do it. And you just bang away and grind like the boring bodybuilder that you are with nothing else in this world to do. That type. And I say that not because everybody has to do that, but the guys with average mediocre genetics like me and you and damn near everybody else in this world, that's what they have to do. They have to pound. The genetic elite, they don't have to do that. They can go out, they can get trashed on a Saturday night if they want to, and they'll come back in and grow like crazy the next week. I'm not gifted like that. I didn't pick my parents very well. I don't know. I love them to death, but I could have done a better job when I was picking out my shoulders and muscle bellies and things like that. We are mere mortals. The people listening to podcasts like this, listening to me, listening to you, they're not the genetic elite. They don't need to listen to advice because everything they do or almost everything they do works really well, or at least it works better than it does for the rest of us. Yeah. We have to do everything right. We have to do everything right to maximize those gains, to make sure that our training and our dieting is optimal or as optimal as possible.
Definitely.
Better be married to the game. Better be passionate about it if you have mediocre or slightly above mediocre genetics.
Yeah, definitely, because those guys are the only reason why we are doing it is because we love it. Otherwise, we would just, I don't even want to search for the word in my head. Yeah, because that would be just offensive. When it comes to the protein, are you a high, moderate, or low protein guy? And I would really know how much for you is high, how much is moderate, and how much is low. Because for some coaches, they said like, yeah, I'm a rather low protein guy, like maximum 5 grams per kilo. Like,
yeah, give me those kilo measurements, because that I could.
you can make it in pounds, because most of the times, like English listeners listen to that. So
I've made one change. I do go with grams these days. Only within the last 4 or 5 years, I did change to measuring everything to grams. Think about that. 42 years and 37, I didn't care, but the last 5 years I changed. Probably because I have so many clients from the UK and, outside of the United States. But anyway, you tell me whether you think it's high, because it's relative. High, low, moderate, it's relative. I typically will put, and clearly there are exceptions, but typically 225 pound person in the 225, 250 in the 300 to 325 range. And I'm like most trainers, I don't even know if maybe we need to take a closer look at it or not, but a lot of trainers set that protein intake and it doesn't usually change. I will adjust it sometimes, and especially when carbs and fats start to get lower. Not a lot of people do. I can think of one coach, Austin Stout, who I have said for years I think is an underrated coach. He's finally come into his own in the last 4 or 5 years, and he's getting the attention he deserves. I think he's a great coach. He is a lower protein guy. And again, it's a relative, it's lower to me. I can't say specifically. I want to say maybe he's like 1 gram, 1.25 per pound in there. It's in there somewhere. It might be 1 gram. But I like that for a couple reasons. I don't think protein needs to be ridiculously high, because it can slow digestion. It's just more difficult to process protein, meat, that sort of thing. And it'll spare carbohydrate, things like that. I think there's some good points there. I'm not big on the old school DC mentality of like 2 grams per pound. I think it's excessive. At the same time, there are people, the Chads and the people who Chad trains and think they grow well. If you're a freak, you can probably, you're a mutant and you're gifted genetically. Yeah, that's probably fine. I think at the end of the day, there's probably more health concerns there, but let's be real. No one's getting into bodybuilding because it's healthy. So we make those decisions as we're in it to try to minimize the health concerns and try to be more healthy, but it's more of a byproduct than it is a main focus with what we do. So yeah, I'm kind of in that, I'm running probably myself. I'm 220, 215. I'll run about 300. I don't think 325, it's in there somewhere. It changes with females. It depends on division. It depends on whether you're open, whether you're bikini. There's a lot of stuff there too, but we're talking about bodybuilding.
Yeah, I need to ask because I should ask before. How do you count your protein? Because some coaches count it only from the meat sources and some from everything. So, for example, like rice and stuff like that. Austin counted it, for example, from every source. Because I have one with Austin. I don't remember right now how much protein he would like to use, but for those guys who just wanted to watch one with Austin, I have it on my channel, so definitely you should watch it. So yeah, so how do you count it?
Hugely sorry for the interruption, guys, but thanks to your comments, subscriptions, and thumbs up, I'm even able to create a podcast like you're watching right now. So if you can, please leave the subscription, comments, and simply a thumbs up. If you wanted to further support me, please use my code. And without further ado, let's get back to the podcast.
First, I want to preface this with, I don't think it's a right or wrong type of thing. It's just a different methodology. Myself and Justin Harris, we're kind of on the same page because we came up at the same time. We basically met each other in like 2000, 2001 on the old anabolics board. Didn't know who we were. Well, we were pretty much nobodies. So we just happened to come up at the same time. We had a lot of debate. We had a lot of conversation. We could see that the other person was, pretty invested and passionate. So we were thinking outside of the box. And I think we both have, well, I know because I worked with him last year, we have the same method as far as we want complete protein. We're counting complete proteins. The other side of it is this. Incomplete proteins are not absolutely useless. It's not like they don't combine with other incomplete proteins and you end up with more protein. It's a giant gray area. What I like to do is I like to make the things black and white that I can make black and white. So I would rather have and count, much like Justin does. And I think there's a lot of old school guys doing the same thing, where we started that way. It has always worked. We don't see any reason to change it. So yes, you're going to pick up a little bit of protein in peanut butter. Yes, you're going to pick up a little bit of protein in oatmeal. I will count complete sources like, if you're eating a lot of quinoa, which a lot of bodybuilders don't, yeah, it's a complete protein source. I'm cool with counting that. But I also don't count trace fats either, unless there's a certain level. It's like if you're eating a lean beef that's 95 or 96% lean, I'm going to consider that it's chicken breast and it's kind of that fat is just assumed. So I'm counting, or I am adding, when I count fat for a client, it's additional fat upon the protein. And I'd say limited. I have a list of what's called approved food sources for each macro. And, I allow the client to challenge me if there's something that they use that, they want to use, and, maybe I'll shoot it down, maybe I won't, that type of thing. It just depends. There are some foods that some clients just tolerate better, and they may not be ideal foods. And there are some that I just don't think belong in there. That's an ever-changing type thing. I used to be dead set against dairy. And at the same time, a couple years ago, I tolerated a no-fat cottage cheese, and I went, you know what? I eat it before bed. Seems to be working well. And I'm the type that if it's working, I'm not going to change it. Mama said you don't fix what ain't broke. So if it's working, then we're going to keep it in. And I got to tell you, cottage cheese when you're dieting kind of tastes pretty good. And that goes to post-workout too. I'm still old school in the sense that I'm still cereal post-workout. Let's get those processed carbs in as fast as possible. Well, it needs to be maltodextrin. You know what? At the end of the day, we're splitting hairs, and maltodextrin tastes like shit, and rice checks, they taste a little less like shit. So if you want to split hairs and you need to be that you need to torture yourself and you need to just I'm swallowing liquid chalk, go for it. I'll support you on that. But you're not going to lose out and not get any less shredded by eating rice checks. We used to go with the Lucky Charms and that type of thing back in the day. And I'll be honest, it didn't work any less than rice checks or any less than maltodextrin or waxy maize or anything else. But sometimes it can mess with people's heads. So if you're that antiquated old school, you need to have everything suck. I'm going to support you. I have no problem with you doing that. People will say, well, if I don't want to work with Skip because he just skip loads. That's not true. That's not the case. I have, I must say plenty. I don't have a lot, but I have enough clients that don't skip load because it doesn't work well for them. It flips a switch that they can't turn off. There are people like that. They'd rather just grind me with the bland, rice and chicken breast. I can do that. I have no problem doing that.
Yeah, you know what's great when it comes to those podcasts with different coaches, that shows that every coach. Let's be just like straight with it. Every coach have their own like a perfect scenario. So, like if everything would be the matter that would be just perfect, I would like to go that way or that way, but we all know that this is just not working in the real world. So, for example, I might not like the higher fat approach, but there are some guys who just need to, or just want to eat a little bit more fat. And if they are not preparing for a pro card winner show or show at all, I don't really care if they like it and they are progress with it and they are fine and their lab works are great.
Yeah,
I would allow them to have a little bit more fun because they pretend that they are feel better with the more fats. No, they just like to eat more fats because the rice is not as dried. But I'm fine.
Well, it also satiates. Fat satiates a lot more than carbs do. I mean, there's no question there. So it can, again, the ghrelin leptin type thing. We don't have to deal as much with that recently, unfortunately, because of Retta. A lot of people have just turned off the hunger, that type of thing. But yeah, and it's one of the things that, we're seeing with the diets when it comes to the GLP use is that fat. I mean, if gastric emptying is slower and you got fat in there, fat's going to make it even slower. So typically when using GLPs and especially with bodybuilding, you got to keep that fat low. Most people have to keep that fat low.
Yeah.
Digestion can only end up being so slow before it's detrimental.
Yeah, all middle chain fatty acids will be an option.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how about the fats in the diet? Because obviously, as you said, you're probably closer to the Justin approach, and I have one with Justin, and we all know that Justin loved the low fat approach. But how about you? If you can keep me on almost 0 to none fats and high carbs, would you rather that way, or maybe you think that fats are really essential? Because I do find it's a little bit more often preferable by coaches in the US than in the Europe, because most of the coaches in Europe would get rid of almost all additional fats, and in the US seems like coaches like to add some sort of olive oil or just a little bit more fattier cut of meats and stuff like that almost to every meal.
Yeah, and you have to differentiate when you say US, what time frame, because back in the late 80s and the early 90s, Chris Aceto was, Chris has been around for a long time. I have a lot of respect for the guy because this is back in the Laura Creval days when he was married to her. He was walking the walk back then, competing. You have a lot of top coaches who don't compete and they never competed. That's an odd one to me. But anyway, Chris walked the walk and he was, getting Laura into great condition, back then for the Olympias and things like that. So he was very low fat. These days, yeah, it's not as low fat. Where do I stand? I don't again, I don't have blanket like black and white things that I do, but I do find that I tend to be lower fat, higher carb on training days, and then on non-training days, then the fat comes up and the carbs go down. So that is something that I do that maybe someone else might not do. See, I'm also very guilty of not knowing what other people do. I've worked with one person in my life, and it was Justin last year. And the reason that I wanted to work with him was because I knew we had a lot of parallels and we had that relationship for 20 some years. I knew a lot about his methodology going in. So that was a big reason, why I worked with him. He was on a very, very short list. So that's something that I do. I'm not zero fat though. I do still want added fat. And I'm the type that I still, and someone will accuse me of this being antiquated. Oh, there's nothing to that. But I'm still not a fan of unhealthy, saturated fat. I'm just not. And then some people say, well, you're going with the omega-6s when you put in, peanut butter or anything else. I still do try to not only myself, but have my clients focus a little bit more on omega-3 and try to have that. It's just a health thing at the end of the day. 25 years ago, I didn't give a shit. I mean, I was, 30 years old. It didn't really matter. I wasn't thinking about my mortality or anything else. As the years have gone by, and I haven't I haven't battled any health issues or anything like that, but I did have an immune system issue when I got shingles in 03 or 04. I can't remember, after a show, to the point where I still have post-herpetic neuralgia on that nerve branch that every 20 to 30 seconds of my life still lights me up. And anybody who from professional muscle might be listening, they probably think, damn, he's still got that every 20 to 30 seconds for the rest of my life. And that's been 20 some years. So that kind of gave me a wake up call, because I had driven myself into the ground at that point. Does it mean that I wasn't taking in healthy fats? No, but I wasn't focused on the health part of it. I remember my wife telling me, there's something on your back. It doesn't look good. I'm like, I'm 2 weeks before a show. Like, it's probably just I feel beat up and it just got to the point where I had to go to the doctor, because I'm like, I think this might feel like what cancer feels like. It was like in my bones. It just hurt really bad. But that kind of was a wake up call in that sense, because at 33 or 34, I shouldn't have been battling with shingles. That's a seriously, immunosuppressed situation. So that woke me up a little bit. So I do focus, and even the skip loading over the years has changed to where it's no more or less effective than it was, but it is healthier. Because I used to have clients sit down to, they'd be like, I was like, whoa, what was your skip load? Like, oh, 3 bags of sour, gummies or whatever. I'm like, I don't know. I think you could do better than that. Let's try to get more. And it started evolving into, let's get more nutrition out of these. Let's get some micronutrients in there. Let's not just throw crap at it. At the end of the day, though, the condition didn't change. The impact on condition, filling out and metabolically, didn't change. It's just that if you're going to eat garbage, you might as well eat relatively healthy and then throw a little something on it. Have a handful of gummy worms, not 3 pints of low-fat Ben and Jerry's and then call that a meal. That type of thing. So there is more of a focus on health. The other thing that comes into play that I do need to mention is, and I've touched on it over the last year or so, there is a negative to skip loading, but it's for the older demographic like myself, who's been around for a long time. We're already battling distension because of the 90s, and people go, oh, it's insulin GH. Clearly that can play a part. There are plenty of people who use insulin GH who have tiny waists. So this, to me, the main culprit is the 90s. Anybody who's lived through the 90s, forced feeding for growth, is going to have distension. You're taking a rubber band and you're expanding it not 100 times or 1,000 times, but 10,000 times. And it's just not going to have the elasticity. It's not just the skin. It's literally your everything from your stomach to your intestines. I laugh and say, if they pull out my intestines, they're probably going to look like PVC pipe. I don't know. They're not going to be, this small elastic, small intestine or anything like that. So that can play into it. Look, I'm just being honest. I don't know. I'm presuming that it does, based on the fact that if I'm going to blame the force feeding of all those meals in the 90s, then I have to say skip loading probably plays a part too. Skip loading could be as little as a couple meals once a week, or it could be 6 meals, a day, a week. It's not the constant 6 days a week, 7 days a week, 42 meals every week for a year, 3 years, 5 years. But then as we get older, we also lose the TVA, tightness, things like that. So when we're younger, TVA is tight, we can pull a vacuum when we don't even train. But you can be pretty damn lean as a masters competitor, and some guys aren't going to be able to pull a vacuum very well. So it can play into that a little bit. But when it comes back to conditioning and the impact that it has metabolically, it's the same as it's always been. And that's one of the things that I'm quite frankly proud of, because before there were ever any studies on this or anybody knew what ghrelin and leptin was, skip loading was working. And I'm asked why it was working. I'm like, I don't know how it works. I mean, I'm was upfront, transparent from the start. Like, I don't know. I'm not that smart, but I know it works. And I just had to continue to replicate that. And at the end of the day, it's been 25 years. Every pro division has used it. Non-competitors have used it. NFL athletes have used it. Bikini women have used it. It just works across the board. And when I say across the board, let me be clear. There is that small percentage of people who can't do it weekly. Might have to be every 2 weeks, might have to be every 10 days. And it might have to be a lot smaller. People will sometimes still come to me like, oh yeah, I want to eat all day. And it's like, that's not how it works. Not everybody can do that. It's individual. It might be a few meals for someone. You have to build into it. You have to be depleted, and there's a process that it involves. I even start clients with clean high carb days first, kind of work them into it. So there's a lot that goes into it, but at the end of the day, it's been 25 years, and I'm quite proud of the fact that it has stood the test of time. And Chris Williamson or anybody else can bash the hell out of it, but I've proven that it works for a long time.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this is what really matters. If it works, it works. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
It used to bother me. It doesn't bother me as much anymore. It did with Chris because I didn't think that was very fair. But that's a big, not big mouth, but a big voice to a lot of people that very easily, I'm sure, went, oh, yeah, that sounds stupid. When they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. They're not in the industry. They don't know anything about it. They're just average people. Oh, it's stupid. He's a dumbass.
There are 2 people in the industry that's impressed me the most. One was like John Meadows. To this day, I wish that one day I could be a man like a John, because he's like a perfect example of a human being that you would like to be. Like, for me, he's a more than a like a man. He's just like, he's pitch perfect. Like, all from the beginning to the end, it's always like everything he does is just impressed me. And the other one is Chris Aceto. But because Chris was the only guy in the industry that can openly says, I don't know. And the guy who worked with him just says, okay, so I better do it that way. It's just, why? And I don't know. Okay, let's do it. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Deference, reverence. And let me say something about John real quick. And the reason I'm not pushing Chris to the side, but I don't know Chris. I never knew Chris personally. I only knew of him through the industry. But John, some people are going to remember him. Well, a lot of people are going to remember him for the impact that he had on the industry. Don't get me wrong. But more importantly and I touched on this earlier in the show, there are a lot of people who can do good work and who are impactful in the industry. But at the end of the day, John had something that a lot of people didn't have. Very few people had. Integrity, trust. Yeah, you trusted him. No one had a bad word. If they had a bad word to say about him, it was strictly out of resentment. I can think of Boston coming after him, but does that really count anyway? I mean, come on. So, and I don't want to, I want to be careful. I want to be respectful to not beat up on Boston posthumously. But he was not a likable guy by quite a few people, the way that he carried himself and the things that he did. At the same time, if you knew him personally, I've heard quite the opposite. So maybe he was different outside of the industry. There are some people who may not like me for whatever reason. That's okay too, because people close to me know the type of person that I am. The point is he was a family man. He was a really good husband. He was a really good friend. He just all around. I'll tell you this: I don't think the industry is going to see someone like him.
No,
I think
no.
there was one John Meadows, and it's disappointing to me that the shitbags will live forever, but the good ones tend to exit early, and I think that's crappy. I do.
You know, this is like a one thing that I'm gonna like probably I lost the word, like just feel bad that I've never met John in person. Uh, like because this is like a real like I don't even know how to say it. I would just wanted to be like him, and to be honest, I'm very often watched his Q&A on YouTube, not because I'm curious what he wanted like to share with us, because those are just the basics, but he still impressed me with all of the answers, because all of the questions that people ask are the stupidest, dumbest fucking question that you can ask. Normally, everyone will just, I don't know, just can't hold themselves. And John always answer with those, like, it wasn't even like he wasn't pretend. He can like put himself on the skin of that guy. Like he was just the first time at the gym, and he can literally just explain why, for example, you should try to bench press or something like that. Like that was that this is something that I am, for to this day I can't just comprehend, that how you can literally be 30 years into something and still can think like a guy who just started and explain it so easily and so calmly, that's fucking impressive.
And sincerely and sincere, like it's an important question. And here's the comparison. John was a nice guy. Like he would do that with sincerity. I would read the question, go, this is a stupid fucking question. You know, I'm just being honest. I may not say that out loud, but I'm thinking it in my head. He wouldn't even think that. He would just answer just like it was any other question. Yeah. Very, very sincere, very empathetic, very invested in the industry. I don't think the guy ever, if he burned out on it at some point, I never saw it.
Yeah.
And you can only do things at a certain level for so long before you're like, I don't know if I like this anymore. You kind of go through that ebb and flow. It's like, okay, you know, I don't know. I'm pretty beat up.
No one could pretend for such a long time.
Right.
No,
Agreed.
He was just that guy. So,
and his wife, for what it's worth, I do have to, she's just the sweetest person. John and I had that parallel. We'd always laugh because, and I don't want to throw his wife under the bus, but the truth is she wasn't as excited and invested in the industry as John was. And my wife has that same parallel. It's an eye roll to her. She respects it because I love it and because it's how I make my living. And for that reason, she does, and she's invested when she meets people and everything else. But she can sooner turn the other way. If we go to the Olympia, the joke is she'll spend 4 or 5 hours with me, and then she's going off with her friends, and they're gonna go drinking, they're gonna go have fun, that type of thing. The rest of Las Vegas is gonna be, what she's paying attention to. They had that parallel. I don't want to say tolerated it, but they were arguably apathetic. But they both understood that that was our passion, and that was us, and we were just entrenched in it. And they respected that part of it, but they could have done without the meathead part of it.
And to be honest, I do believe that this should be that way, because there's some sort of contractive, like there's just a plane of, especially if you have a kids, because then you can raise them how it's supposed to be and not like only tunnel vision.
I agree. I agree 100%. And that's why I've always said the soulmate thing, it only lasts for a little while. It might be a great ride, but I've been married 33 years. We've been together 35 years. They were married for quite a while too. They had a very positive family dynamic. He always was invested. She was always invested. It's the same thing, you know, in our family. There, we had a lot of parallels. In fact, we arguably talked about family stuff more than we talked about bodybuilding. So it was nice. It was nice to have. And I think, look, if you're talking about bodybuilding and picking up heavy things and setting it down and chicken and rice all the time, sometimes you like to talk about other stuff too.
Yeah,
And he
definitely.
did. He always loved bodybuilding, but if you give him a chance to talk about other things, you know, he was a poker player and he had other interests too, that other hobbies that could kind of give him a respite or a bit of a reprieve from bodybuilding.
Yeah, definitely. So moving forward, because like I would really love to continue with that, especially that, to be honest, like John is someone that I would really love to know about more, because we only see that like a tiny bit of his life on the social media. So definitely, but going forward, when it comes to the mini cuts and the off season, because nowadays like seems like the mini cuts are some sort of new thing, and some coaches, I have the feeling that they are using it for sake of using it. And do you believe that mini cuts during the like strike for being an open bodybuilder is something that you definitely need to do, or you'll be using it more like if I'm, for example, screw the process by eating too much of the crappy shit and stuff like that? Or do you think and believe that, for example, you would structure my off season like 12 weeks pushing, then mini cut, then maybe another 12 weeks of pushing or something like that?
No. No to the latter part. Ideally, it's just this constant, regimented, structured, slow step up, keeping insulin sensitivity as much as possible. I am very reactive when it comes to a mini cut. And I'll go so far as to say this just to give some idea based on numbers. I might have 7 guys a year in an off season where I go, let's head into a mini cut. And I don't look at it even necessarily from a body fat standpoint. I'm looking at it from a progression standpoint. We've made a few changes and things are just stagnant. There's just seems to be this stability that we don't want, kind of a comfort zone, a plateau, if you will. If a client gets out of control on body fat, it's on them, not me, because the plan isn't making them fat. That's it needs to be said too. It's not a week vacation. Anybody can go on a week vacation, and unless they're just eating like a sloth, like they're committing one of the deadly, what are they called, world sins, or that type of thing, gluttony. But even then, the majority of those people can come back, clean up. They're holding a bunch of water. They feel like, oh shit, they're fatigued. But then they clean up after the week and they might only be up a couple pounds. The workouts were great, that type of thing. And they've cleaned up after, 5 to 7 days. But if you go off for a couple weeks and you're just not giving a shit. And you know what? In fairness, maybe you had a death in the family. I mean, I'm going kind of extreme here, but I'm making the point that maybe something was out of your control. Look, if you're in the off season and you have some family crisis or you have something going on, I don't expect anyone to take rice and chicken with them and step out of a, memorial or something like that. That's ridiculous. So there are valid reasons sometimes when people go off the rails. However, the vast majority of them are just, they went off the rails because they were having a good time. So yeah, in a situation like that, there might be some type of mini cut, but I'm reactive when it comes to that. I see the situation for what it is. And I like, we need to pull back a little bit, but I'm talking mini cut, like 4 to 6 weeks. We're not going no 12-week type, thing. That's just a cut. That ain't no mini cut.
Yeah.
That's, you're too fat and we got to get you a little leaner, or you're not insulin sensitive and you're not progressing and we need to pull back. And then what happens is you pull back, and it's funny because people think, well, you pull back, you get leaner. Then when you start to increase, that's when you're going to grow. No, what actually happens is in that the first 2 to 3 weeks, as the calories come down, the insulin sensitivity starts to increase or get better. You start progressing there, even as the weight is coming down. And a lot of people will do this into the beginning of a prep too, where, okay, we're cleaning things up, digestion is better, everything's more efficient, you're assimilating nutrients more efficiently, and oh, we're growing, but the calories are coming down. Wait a minute, this isn't supposed to happen. So that just kind of cuts to the fact that we have these, a lot of us are hardwired the wrong way. Calories come down, how could we be getting stronger? Well, there's a reason for that. Well, calories are going up, why am I not getting stronger? Well, there's a reason for that. It's not that black and white. There's a lot of nuance inside of each one of those decisions or each one of those things that we're doing.
Definitely.
So, not a big mini cut guy. It's a reactive type thing.
How about the cardio? Cardio during the off season. Are you like to have it?
Yeah, I hate it. I'll go on record as saying I abhor cardio. I, not only for myself, but I want to keep it as minimized and as limited as possible for my clients too. There is a health component that I will not deny, but we're not in bodybuilding for health. It can help with recovery. It can help with soreness, that type of thing. But I'm talking like low impact cardio. There's an argument for HIIT cardio only because, and I'll explain this real quick. I was never a fan of HIIT, but I did HIIT last year with Justin once a week. Pretty much scheduled it like in between my leg sessions, like evenly. So maybe like 3 days after leg session, 3 days before the other leg session. And until 5 weeks out, I was like PR in numbers that I haven't put up since my 2020 injury when I tore my glute. And then it went into 2.5 years of rehabbing the right knee. So it was a big deal to me because I thought, how can this be till 5 weeks out? I mean, that's crazy. It was just very bizarre. So I gave the HIIT cardio credit because it was almost like a added leg session in the sense that I got that big pump. It wasn't, heavy resistance or anything like that, but it was enough to give me a pump and to arguably help with recovery. And it really worked well. The problem with HIIT cardio is it has to be in my opinion, has to be very carefully monitored because it can be an issue if there's too much of it or if it's too long. And the last thing you want to do during prep, I mean, you're already on limited resources. Your recovery ability is typically not as good as calories come down and caloric output goes up. So you're dragging ass. Recovery is just not that great. You don't want to add too many things to the mix. That's a train. I live very, very urban, downtown West Palm Beach. I don't know if you heard the train, but I can hear it through my headphones. Anyway, but when it comes to list cardio, so I mean, look, if you have to do cardio, I want it just low intensity. I want it what is the equivalent of steps, but you're doing it on a treadmill. I don't want this high heart rate. I'm saying like 100, 110. That's where I am. I think that the ROI for cardio at 2 hours a day, and some people have to do it. Don't get me wrong. Some people have to do it. But the majority of people, there's just very, very little ROI. You're putting out a lot of energy for very little return, and it's arguably going to negatively impact your training as well. Another point that needs to be made is if you have a client or yourself and you're very active, I always use the ER nurse. I have 2 daughters who are nurses, so maybe that's why. But I've also had a lot of clients who are nurses. So if you're working 12-hour shifts in the ER, you're pretty active. 30 minutes of cardio to you, arbitrary number to make my point, really not going to have much of an impact compared to someone like myself who does podcasts all day, types to clients, and looks down on the grocery store and still won't go down there. I'll have them delivered. So I don't move very much. So 30 minutes of cardio to me can have quite an impact versus the person who's working 12-hour shifts and they're constantly on their feet. So when I onboard a client or we're going into a cut phase, and I've already been working with them, I have to take into consideration what that level of activity already is. Because again, that if they're active, cardio isn't going to have the impact or as much of an impact as it's going to have on someone who's very, very sedentary.
So would you okay, no cardio for me because I am a heavy as bodybuilder and we wanted to be a bodybuilder, not a like cardio athlete. So, would you like me to count my steps or doing any of some sort of activity? Because remember, I am a coach, so I'm, if not my dog, because right now I'm doing like 50K of steps daily, but if not that, I would probably do less than 3K of steps daily.
How many do you do daily? Did you say 50K
Yeah, 50 to 20K, something like that
a day?
a day. Yeah.
Like 50?
Yeah, like
Okay, I didn't know maybe if I was
0, 0, 0.
15. Okay, 1-5.
One
You're
five
saying,
zero zero
okay,
zero. Yeah.
I thought you said 50. I thought you said 50, not 15.
No, no,
Okay.
50, 15.
I'm like, bruh, you don't need any cardio if you're doing 50, 50 a day. 15 a day to me is that, I think that's pretty active. Now, here's the question though, and this matters. Are you getting those 15 in your house where you take a step here, you take a step here, and that counts as 3 because your step counter, step counters aren't terribly accurate? Or are you going out for a walk with your dog and you're doing it for like a sustained period of time? That's different. I would rather that those steps are in a sustained period of time, because I don't think step counters are very accurate. Plus, the other thing is too, I'll wear a step counter on my ankle, because if your legs are moving and your arm isn't moving a full, they have to measure, typically they measure arm movement, not your feet, but they assume that your arm is going to move when your leg moves. So there's a lot of half steps. There's a lot of steps that count as 2 instead of 1. So when it's constant and that rhythm is there and you're doing it in a sustained amount of time, then it's more accurate. And I think that I'd rather have that be a sustained amount of time. And then any other steps you're going to get, walking around your apartment or your house or whatever you're doing, I think those are just added on. I don't think that's as beneficial as something that's sustained. That's my take. And other coaches may feel differently. That's how I look at it.
Okay. So how about okay, can we can talk about the PEDs? Yeah?
Talk about what?
PEDs. You're
Yeah,
okay
sure.
with that?
Oh yeah.
So how about the PEDs in the off season? Are you like put in a favor for some sort of PEDs? Like, for example, you are uh, still on a old school approach of tests, nandrolone and EQ, or maybe you're lean more
I didn't know
into
that
the
was old school. I didn't know that was an antiquated method.
no, right now is a new school because no one have access to the primal and
Yeah, that's true
maximum.
too.
This is
That
a
is
new
true.
school.
Yeah. A couple things, thoughts. First, and I say this in jest, but I'll never be a professional bodybuilder, but I am a professional drug user. And I want to explain that. What I mean is, I have used a lot of shit for a lot of years, to the point where there are peers of mine who have arguably used the same, if not less, and I'm outliving them, and that's uncomfortable. It really is. That is, when you get to the age where your peers and people you respect are dipping out and you're not, there is a question of, I'm on borrowed time, that type of thing. But my point about the length of time that I've taken and the amount of things I've taken, because the trolls will hit hard. Well, you don't have a physique that looks like that, and that is true. I'm the first to admit, and I've said for a long time, I am a slightly better than mediocre bodybuilder. And then I get slammed by people who, not slammed, but then the comments will come in from people who have worse genetics than me, talking about how, well, you shouldn't look at it that way. I'm just a realist. I'm just being honest. It's not my feeble attempt at humility. It's just the way I call it. It took me 27 years to qualify to stand on a national stage. And then when I did, I got my ass kicked. So that's pretty realistic. I think that's a fair call. So even though I've taken as much as I have taken, it's clearly not a gear issue. That's the point that I'm making. So anybody who argues that, well, you just need to take more gear, it's just silly. and stupid to think that way. And I'm not the only one who has done more gear and not gotten great. And I've done more gear and I've gotten better results. But we're talking, instead of this, it's this. It's not correlated. It's not like, oh, I should be having the, I've done what some people would call ridiculous amounts of Serostim. And it worked great in 2025 and then or 2024 and then 2025. I'm like, I don't know. This is just day and night difference. So I started cutting it back because I'm like, I'm not going to kick out all this money and take all this gear when the payoff just isn't there. So my gear use is not how I plan or how I put together, gear cycles for my clients. Obviously, I still am in that, experimental phase even after all these years. I don't put my clients in that position. So I am a pretty moderate, as far as a trainer, I'm a pretty moderate dose guy. I don't throw gear at my clients and be like, yeah. In fact, I'd say the vast majority of my clients would say I had to talk him into more gear. I had to kind of speak up and say, hey, I'd like to do more. Here's my thing. If you're a client of mine and you want to do a shit ton of gear, I'm on board with that. As long as you hear me out and you let me give my opinions and why I think it might not be a good idea. That's what. But at the end of the day, I allow my clients. Gear use is it's based on your personal comfort level. And if you want to throw it all in and you want to, max out your poundages or max out your dosages, I'm on board. I'm on board with that if you've given it good thought. And here's the reason. If you're going to do that, you're going to go to someone else who's going to support it anyway. I'd rather be able to know that I'm monitoring it and I'm going to be the first to point out any type of negatives or any type of sides or your blood work and say, this is why this is happening. This is what, if we pull this back, this will change this, that type of thing. So gear in the off season, again, it's not blanket statements, but I tend to go lower gear in the off season, higher gear pre-contest. And I've had conversations with other trainers and prep guys, and some of them are on board with me and some of them are like, no, I do it the other way. The reason I tend to do that is because, especially if you're coming off of a show or you're coming out of a cut phase and you're going into an off season, you don't need a lot of gear. The food, and I'm not going to bullshit anybody and say food is as anabolic as steroids. That's not the case. But when you're increasing your calories coming out of a cut phase, when you're lean, there is some serious growth to be happening right there. And keeping that insulin sensitivity and stepping out of it incrementally. I know it's reverse dieting. I can hate that term because I think it originated with one person who I just it's cringy to even mention his name. So I'm not going to. As you're stepping out, there is this anabolic milieu just from increasing the calories. You don't need a lot of gear. And in fact, I'd go so far as to say this. I've not seen a dramatic difference in clients, and been training clients for 25, 26 years now. So I've seen a lot of shit. I have not seen where people come out of a cut phase and go into an off-season phase, take more gear and grow more than to take moderate dosages and step up the calories, increasing it, just progressing from there. So I don't think more gear is justified. That's my opinion. Someone else may feel differently about it. When you come into the cut, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just wanted to assess what's, in your opinion, good amounts, what is high and what is low in case of a guy like me. So the guy who just for example, started at 230 and wants to go probably like 260 to 70 in the off season, like in a good shape.
Well, first thing I'd say is it doesn't
on average, because obviously it's going to be depends on how I reacted on that, but on average.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, what I was going to say was your weight and where you want to go has, as far as I'm concerned, has nothing to do with the dosing. The first thing I'm going to ask is, what have you done before and how have you responded to it? What have those dosages looked like before? Because if you've gone, again, arbitrary numbers, 1,000 testosterone and 500 NPP, I'm just throwing out 1,500 milligrams, and you didn't respond terribly well to it, yeah, let's not go there. I don't think that probably doesn't need to happen. If there, it just depends more on the past drug usage, your dosages, your compounds, than it does on where you're sitting as far as, body weight and where you want to go. I don't even factor that in.
So
To the
previously, my doses goes around like most of the times around 2 grams total. In the past, when I was like 80 kilos, I've up to 3 grams easily.
Mhm.
Back in the days, because that was the times when more is more, and then if I realized that I probably don't need that as much. Uh, so like average dosage for me is around two,
Okay. So how many years have you used gear?
about 9 years, 10 years.
Okay. So wow. So it's not anything like 2 or 3 years where you just jumped up to those high
No,
dosages. You use okay. All right.
no, but
Um,
I would say that like when I was like year in, that was the time when I was like 2.5, 3 grams, maybe even more. That was the times when I remember I was less than 80 kilos. So it's probably around, I don't know, like 180 pounds, something like that. And I was on 90 milligrams of tren weekly.
okay.
So yeah. So
Okay. So
yeah.
let me ask you a few questions. When's what are you on right now?
Oh, right now it's almost nothing because right now I'm not consider myself even on a like proper bodybuilding plan. Just my eating
Okay.
and my just training my looks like a bodybuilder. But other
Okay.
than
And
that,
so how long have you been on what you're on right now, even though it's a little bit? Are we talking 3 months? Are we talking a year?
yeah, I would really love to stay on uh, that round that I have just finished my competitive season because what's happened right now for me it's I can barely train, so that's not even a
No,
comprehensive.
and I totally get that too. But I'm just saying, have you like just from a gear standpoint? I'm just trying to get like how long have you been on lows?
Let me say like that. For the last 10 years, I've come off like less than 1.5 grams only once when I was with Dominic Mutasio. And for like 9 years, I was straight on gram or more.
Okay. How long have you been on this low dose?
Right now, it's almost like probably 5 months, something
Okay.
like that. And I was like 3 months off totally. Then I was on 150 milligrams of test only. Right now, I'm on 300 grams of test, 300 grams of masteron, but I would probably need to decrease because I was just starting to. The idea was to get back to onto the size, but then my back's just fucked up again, and I have
Okay.
severe sciatica, so I can barely move. So I'm just probably gonna lower it again and just wait until the guts give me a green light.
Okay, then let's say this. Let's make a couple assumptions. You just started working with me, but you're actually healthy right now. You don't have any hangups. Your shoulder's great, your back is great, that type of thing. You're just like, you know what, I want to get back on. I want to go into this growth phase and I'm healthy and everything is good. Going back up to 1200, 1500, that's probably where I wouldn't have you terribly high dose because I want to see, I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant, but you're working with me. So fuck what happened in the past. I want to see how you respond on, with all the variables that I'm going to put in place with this level of gear. And let's see what happens over this first, 4 to 6 weeks. And let's see, okay, from there, maybe we want to go up. But I have a feeling that coming into a phase where you're healthy and you're coming back on, if you've been off, I've been very low dose for 5 months, that 1500, 12 to 1500 meg, if you're going to go into a growth phase and we're going to, make sure it's not going to be a diet or you're not going to be in a deficit, I think it would work incredibly well. And for anybody who's thinking, well, 12 or 500, 12 to 1500, you don't need to go that high. Arguably not, but I would go with the 12 or 1500 based only on the limited amount of information you've given me because that's not a high level for you. And I would want to see how you respond from there, because I would bet that you'd probably respond very well. Look, the gear matters. It always matters. I would never imply that it doesn't. But equally as important, and arguably more important, is how optimized your training is and your diet. And of course the other, details of, sleep, stress, everything else. But you said that those things are pretty good. So I would optimize your training. I would optimize your diet. And I think that on that relatively low dose, and I only say relatively based on what you've used in the past, that would allow us to progress. And then maybe we get to the point where, okay, we're maxing things out. Then we pull back for 4 to 6 weeks, arguably to see if you resensitize. We talked about it earlier, kind of a mini cut. Hate that term, but we all know what it means. And then as we come off of that 4 to 6 weeks, then we're going to take the dose up a little bit. Maybe we go to 2,200, and then we start building it again. That's a in the moment, based on the limited information he gave me, that's probably, I would be going in that direction.
Yeah. Okay, great. So how about the GH in the off season? Do you believe the more is more, or you like to keep it like, remember, let's say that I can go like afford wise, however you want me to go, and obviously my blood sugar stays perfect. I don't have a problem with carpal tunnel syndrome or anything like that on higher amount.
Wow, you're a rare case.
Yeah, I am.
But I see what you're saying.
I was on 10 IUs like year round for a very long time. And the highest I've go was 20 IUs daily for a rather short period of time, maybe like 4 or 5 weeks. But that was on a like a cat, and still my sugar was perfect, and all of like everything was just perfect. But you have to remember that I was never sloppy, never, with my diet, with my cardio, with anything like that. Even though I am like probably one of the worst bodybuilder on the planet Earth, like structure wise, I was on a probably pro level when it comes to the everything that I've managed.
Okay, farm grade or generic?
Generic, yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to pretend for just a second that I'm the trolling the two of us. I don't know why you guys are talking about IUs. Everything should be milligrams. I don't know why anybody would refer to it's just the dumbest shit ever, but we got that last time we were talking about GH on an Instagram reel. And I'm obviously
probably because of the Justin, because he mentioned it once on a podcast.
Justin Harris did?
Yeah, and then everyone's just go bizarre.
I didn't know that it was Justin. There's another person that I'm thinking of that I
do believe I hear that from Justin, but he was like almost like you just mentioning that they are counting in like that in the medical field.
Yeah.
But for the average like meatheads like us, like we are using IUs because it's just far easier.
It's kind of the way we've been referring to GH forever and ever. Hallelujah. Like, yeah. I don't understand why people do that, but whatever. Anyway, look, if you're tolerating the sides, I'm in the camp of run more. There are exceptions, obviously, but if you're maintaining blood sugar levels, and I always say step up. I mean, start, if you know that you're going to tolerate 8, IU, well, start at 8. We can jump it to 10 or 10 or 12. We can kind of go. I'm not one of those out of the gates, like, hey, let's push 16 IU. I don't think that needs to happen. And it does invite the carpal tunnel. It does invite the water retention. It does invite, blood pressure going up and stuff like that. So I also think that stepping up, it's just the natural progression thing. There's no sense just jumping into the deep end when you can benefit from those lower doses as you're moving up. But I am of the camp that I don't want to say the more you can afford, the more, because that's just been driven into the ground. But there's some truth to it. There's some truth to it in the sense that if you're not, look, I have to be careful with it because it thickens my skin. I'm older. Okay. So the older demographic does have to be careful, because the more growth you do, the more potential for that thickening of the skin. And it can change your look, and it can change it to not be terribly pleasing. And I'm getting to that point, if I'm being honest. I had much better results only as recently as 2 or 3 years ago than I have in the last couple of years. But let's be fair, and I own it. I am 56 years old. I've been training for 40 years. I've been doing gear for 30 plus years. It's a long time to do shit. So there is an end of the road. And I don't mean death, hopefully, but there's an end of the road for these maximal or these maximizing my dosages to where it's just not the payout or the payoff, the ROI isn't going to be there. I'm already starting to see that. So I'm the exception to the rule because the vast majority of people listening to you and me right now are not my age and they've not been doing it as long. So if I had it to do all over again, I'd have probably taken growth earlier. I was raising with my wife 4 kids, and I didn't have the privilege of being able to do that. When I started making the amount of money that I could, I still would have felt guilty spending that amount of money. That's why I changed to Serostim. I have an empty house. I don't have kids to feed and feel guilty about putting them through college. They're in college, they're through college, all that is done. So now I can piss away money if I feel like it. And if it's not on Serostim, it'll be on really nice watches. That's the type of thing that you get to when you're in a position where you're not raising kids and you can spend that kind of money. So taking those dosages up, I wish I could have done it sooner because I probably could have benefited from it. It was very clear that I benefited from it as recently as 3 or 4 years ago. How high did I go? 15, 16? I don't think I got to 18. But it was like 104, 112 IU a week. I can't remember. I'd have to check notes. Done a lot of drugs for a long time. Can't exactly recall off the top of my head what I was doing. But the benefit was pretty clear. It has been said that anything over 10 IU, really not much of a benefit. By coaches that I have a lot of respect for. I did see a difference, but I don't know. I saw a difference in dropping the dosage now, but I also don't know if it was an age factor, if it was Retta. Again, coming back to the Retta is, I have plenty of things to say about that because I just don't think it's a great compound. I think that played into it. I think I've used a lot of insulin with the GH as well. Then you put the Retta in. The insulin doesn't have the same impact that it does with the Retta, in my opinion. And I've seen it not only with myself, but I'm seeing it with other clients as well. So there's a lot of other factors in there. At the end of the day, take as much growth as you can tolerate as you step it up higher, because there are plenty of people who see, and myself included, and I'm mediocre at best, who have seen really good results at that 15, 16. For me, it was 15, 16. It might be 20 for someone else. It might be 10 for someone else. But not as much in that 8 to 10 or 12. And I was using Serostim. I've been using farm grade growth for about 4 or 5 years. And I do think it is substantially better. And I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, IGF levels, but I will say this. I don't think the impact of GH on us as bodybuilders is strictly related to IGF levels.
Yeah.
If it were, generic would be just as bad, just as good. And that's what they're arguing, what the generic users argue. And what I always find funny is it's the generic users who have, and I'm not knocking them, but I am going to say this. It's the generic users who have not used quality farm grade growth who say there's no difference. And that to me is laughable, because if you haven't used them, I've used generics that have been great, but I've also used them where I'm waterlogged at 8 IU, but yet I can titrate up to 15, 16 IU of Serostim and be damn near bone dry. So there is something to be said of that. Again, it comes back to personal experience versus what you're hearing from other people. And I'm tired of so many people on social media giving opinions that are not based on their experience. It's based on what they've heard from other people. And I don't like that.
I do believe like as well that GH is not only like IGF-1 related, because I do see that those papers you are mentioned about the like suppressing 10 IUs, it's no better than using less than 10 IUs because of the IGF. Like it is like cut off, like am I say correctly? Like a point of like you are no longer raising your IGF. Let's say it's like that. It's going to be easier. But I do believe that it is a huge difference, because me being on 20 IUs, I can see how much my metabolism raising up. I do see the huge difference in how much I burn in the fat. It was like it was visible, definitely. So
Mhm.
it is like more than just IGF. But you've mentioned insulin, and that would be the next question. What do you think about the insulin in the off season? Would you like to utilize it as a tool to building the muscle, or do you think that insulin is maybe just a way of kind of protect my pancreas, or maybe just protect myself from getting like crazy high on blood glucose?
My answer is yes to both. I do think that there's a protective variable or mechanism. At the same time, I'm always careful when I say that, because then it's inferred that I'm saying that it's healthy and it's a great idea. It it really just comes down to the user, how they're using it, the feedback, whether they're paying attention to their blood work, how they're responding, whether they're staying insulin sensitive. And I'll even say this: I have so many people, including myself, who will use it, say, pre-workout and then on high carb days or skip load days for months on end and stay insulin sensitive. I think that the old school mentality of, oh my God, you can only run it, 4 weeks or 3 weeks or something, and you're gonna just, you're gonna be insulin resistant. And I think that's just garbage. I think it can happen if you don't know what you're doing, but I at least in my experience, I've not seen that happen with myself or my clients. It can be run for long periods of time. It can't be run for every meal all the time. And even then, let me go back on that. Let me say that it probably could. If you were dialed in and you were paying attention to everything, blood sugar levels, you probably could run it in small doses. The argument with Lantus, I don't want to say it's funny, but we're kind of to the phase now, or in this trend where Lantus is bad. It's going to make you, insulin resistant. It's not during like a high carb day. If you're going to run high carbs all day and you're running a base of Lantus, that's 14, 16 hours roughly. That's a day of high carb meals. All that's doing is benefiting so that you don't have to use as much fast acting insulin for each meal. If you're going to use it daily, or you're going to use it on a day where it's not, then I can understand where that would be an issue. But who the hell would do that? I don't know of anybody who's doing that. Maybe that's what they're referring to, and I'm just missing the boat on it. But there is a place for Lantus. It just has to fit what you're doing, whether it be high carb meals, skip load meals, that sort of thing. I'm going to go one further. I'm going to piss off a lot of people with this one. I want to be careful how I say this. No, I'll say it. I laugh when people say that there can't be fat in a meal when you're using insulin because it's going to be stored as fat. It's borderline silly to me. And it's because I've experienced that that's not the case for I don't know how long. And then there's this misconception that fat can only be stored as body fat. The muscle sucks up carbohydrate and stores it as glycogen. It also does that with triglyceride. It does it to a much lesser degree than carbohydrate. I agree with that. I concede that. But it still does it. And I've seen it for so long in skip loading and with insulin, without insulin, that it's almost one of those things that if you see it on paper, you could make it make sense. But when it's applied practically, it doesn't work. It's the argument when they try to lay it out. I just look at it and I go, God, you're smarter than this. You're educated. You have all this experience. Where have you seen this happen? And I don't think that they've seen it happen. I think they see it on paper and they go, oh, it just can't happen. And I don't like paper. I just don't.
Yeah.
There are too many things on paper that when they're applied and that they just don't mesh. It's not the same outcome. Now, I'm not at all saying sit down to a plate of bacon covered in duck fat and take insulin. I don't know what happened. That's not in my wheelhouse. I don't do that. But I do know what happens when there's fat in carb meals. And this is the part I have to be careful about. It has been said by people who, no, I have to be careful. I have to be careful. I'm not a shit stirrer anymore.
Yeah.
If we'd go back 15, 20 years, I'd be a little stealthy and I'd say a couple snarky things, but I don't want to do that.
I totally get you. I think that it comes from the mouth of people who, one, either not trying themselves that approach, or two, they are just over it on a daily, no matter of how much insulin they use or if they use it with the fats or not. Because I've putting fats every fucking time when I put insulin into pre-workout plan to my guys, because I do believe that a little bit of fats, like 5 to 10 grams of fats from nut butter or something like that, do stabilize those insulin, and they have like real sustained energy throughout the whole workout, sleeping on those tiny amount of carbs during. They don't need to sip like 80 grams, 100 grams of dextrose or cyclodextrin to sustain the peaks of the insulin just because of that. So if you are smart about that and you understand how it's really working, and you understand that it is not only about the fats, it's not only about the carbs, it's also about the potassium and all the electrolytes when it comes to insulin, as well as the fiber in the meals. So if you structure your meals a little bit better, like, you can manage the amount of insulin and manage the amount of carbs you need during these workouts. Thus, you don't have to feed your insulin to not get like passed away during the session. You can just use a tiny bit amount and get the benefits of insulin during the workouts.
Pre-workout is not a time to, I think it's approached in the wrong context. People tend to think, well, I've tolerated, this dose, so I'm going to go up. More is better. Oh, I'm going to go up from there because I tolerate. It's not about maxing out that dose. It's just I don't know how to explain. It's almost just like it's an added kicker. Keep the dose low, benefit from the dose. It's not like GH or anything else where, if I can tolerate more, I'm going to benefit more from it. It's just not a situation like that. The other thing too is, I would be okay if other people said, just keep the fat out of the meal when using insulin, because we don't know where that cutoff is to where it's too much. If they would say that, I'd be like, okay, that's a safety. Like, I don't know. It creates a gray area. And then I have to work with my clients on how much is enough. And it could be, individual for each person. Okay. But that ceiling is not at 4 grams. I don't think it's even at 8 or 10. I think the ceiling is higher than that. So where it is, I can't say. What I'm saying is I don't think it's this ridiculously small amount. Why? Because I've seen moderate fat intake in skip load meals with insulin that have created nothing but absolutely shredded skinless physiques.
Yeah, I do believe that almost doesn't matter, to be honest.
Yeah.
As long as
I think it has to be up pretty hard.
Yeah, as long as you're training hard, they all gonna be probably used up during the session if you're smart about it, because you would have to eat like probably a pizza or something like that.
You have such an increase in metabolic activity from these high carb or skip load days anyway, that where you have this big crossover in taking in more calories. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you add up calories from skip loading or cheat meals or that type of thing, if you're taking in a lot of calories, the math doesn't math anyway. It doesn't math if you're just looking at calories. It literally looks on paper like there's no way you can get leaner, and yet you do. So, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We don't have the time. I mean, we could get into white poop and everything else.
My camera is about to die, to be honest.
Oh,
so
okay.
I probably need to switch to my computer once in a minute. But that's like probably the basics when it comes to the off season for us today. But I do wanted to ask you one more additional question today about this Retta, because I just need to know, what do
Yeah.
you think about the Retta, and why you have such a strong opinion about it?
Okay. First, I'm going to preface this with I don't think that it's crap. I don't think it's useless. I think it has its place. But the issue that I have with it is we're treating it in the industry like it's this up on a golden pedestal. Whoa! Like, oh, sunshine coming off of it, and everybody needs to use it, and there's no negatives to it. And I go on record and say that's absolute horseshit. I think that we're going to find in the industry, and other trainers are agreeing with me. They've had similar thoughts. Not all the trainers. I've had a couple who are just, matter of fact, they don't see that yet, and that's fine if they're not seeing it. I am, and I'm talking about my experience with it to put it in the heads of other people so that other people can go, yeah, I think I might be seeing the same thing. I think it's going to get to the point as early as maybe the end of this year into next year where we find that it's a compound that can be used sparingly, maybe to resensitize, maybe for like a reset phase, that type of thing, much like we're starting to do with this this mitochondrial hoopla. Yeah, and that was going down the same path. Like, well, I'm taking SLU. Well, I got to throw Mount C in there. Well, I got to take all this SS31, OU812, and all the other. I don't even know. I can't come up with all the names. We just pile on. That's what we do as an industry. More is always better. More cardio, more gear, more training. When in doubt, do more. I don't know if I have enough protein. I'm gonna take in more protein. That type of thing. And we're shooting ourselves in the foot for doing that. What I'm seeing with Retta is this. I saw it with myself first, but I didn't figure it out. I thought it was other things. And then it just became obvious because I thought, oh man, that was the only thing that changed from 2024 to 2025. So I want to make sure that anybody listening doesn't think that I only have this opinion based on my experience with me, because that would be silly. I've started to look at other clients and starting to see the same thing. And I've started talking to other coaches and they're feeling the same way. I'm not going to mention any names because that's not fair. They haven't been 100% like, yes, I see. They're going, oh, you know what? That would explain, it's almost like, let me take a closer look because you might have something here. That's a better way to explain it. I used Retta for about 18 months. It worked so well, and I didn't expect that it would. I said earlier, I was going to check the box and go, oh, it doesn't work. It's not that great. Because that's a lot of times what happens in our industry. There's nothing really, it's like, oh my God. And then it just worked really well. And I kept having to increase my calories. I'm like, wow, like I'm accidentally getting leaner. This is crazy. Took it into the prep last year. And I noticed things during the prep. I'm like, wow, I seem, I'm like flatter than usual, but you know what? I'm getting lean. Okay, cool. And then late I'm like, God, my legs are disappearing, which is kind of odd, but I'm like, well, I'm getting older, that type of thing. But then I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm putting up PRs on numbers for legs that I haven't put up since 2020. It's kind of odd. I have the strength here, but I don't have the size. Like, what the hell's good? And when I say size, I'm talking, it might be 1.5 inches different. I mean, this is substantially different. With the pictures next to each other, you're like, holy moly, that's a dramatic difference. But I chalked it up to, other things. And I'm like, well, and then I started noticing it with clients because it was just sticking in my brain. My opinion is this: long term, Retta is showing the possibility that it's Pac-Manning away muscle cells, Pac-Manning away essentially muscle tissue, where before we thought, oh, no, it's not going to do that because we're on gear. Oh, it's because we have a higher protein intake. It's not doing it because we're not seeing it short term. We're getting leaner. And I do remember now, I was going back, I'm like, yeah, I do remember I liken it to this. It's almost like the metformin days where, oh, to help you get leaner. Oh God, I'm running really flat. Like this is kind of crazy. And oh, I'm shitting my pants because I have, diarrhea and everything else. So we kind of moved through the metformin phase when in the beginning it was this great thing. I think it's going to Retta is going to kind of trend that way. We're taking a compound that we don't necessarily, we don't have blood sugar issue. Most of us don't have it. We're not taking it for that reason. We're taking it to get leaner, which is exactly what we were doing with metformin back in the day. So there are clear health benefits to it. We can break down a million different things from the cholesterol, the lipid profile, and there's a ton of health benefits, but we're not in this bodybuilding endeavor for health. It's kind of a side benefit. We didn't start taking it for health. We started taking it to get leaner, to curb hunger. And when I say curb hunger, it started off as curb hunger. Then it's like, okay, well, I feel a little bit of hunger. I think the dose needs to go up. And it's like, what? This is not why we're using this. This is not to eliminate hunger. And we're eliminating or minimizing a very important signal while we're trying to get lean. It seems on the surface to be a good idea. When you start digging a little deeper, it's not a very good idea. That hunger needs to be there. So throughout the course of the last year or so, we've come to kind of rely on this to control hunger. And in the meantime, we don't realize, like the studies were saying with the GLPs, wow, 40% of the weight loss is muscle tissue. And we very quickly as an industry went to, well, that's because they're not weight training, they're not doing gear, they're not eating enough protein, which is true. But then we just naturally assume we're not losing anything. And then, there are other trainers who will say, well, I've got people growing on it. I grew on it too. Until I didn't, and I was in a deficit, and it started to just eat the shit out of me. And I'm watching it do the same thing, not to the same degree, but to other clients as well. And I think the average person isn't going to see it, but competitors are going to see it. And we could go to the top levels for a minute, and we can talk about the genetic elite. There are people at the top level that this compound didn't fare very well in shows from 2025. And then they eliminate that compound, and then they come into 2026, and all of a sudden they look crazy again. Now, I'm not saying that we're all genetically elite, but what I'm saying is if you're seeing it in the genetically elite, why would that not be happening to the rest of us mere mortals? And I'm saying it is. So I think that it's going to be it's going to transform or end up being a compound that is used, I don't want to say occasionally, but far less frequently instead of being relied upon right now, because it's going to backfire. And here's why I'm talking about it so much. I'll take the hits from other people, but what I'm doing is I'm planting a seed in people so that they can now be aware and be like, nah, he's crazy. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it's a couple months down where like, yeah, I don't know. I don't look like I did. Maybe he's got something here. So if they decide that that's not the case and they want to eat, look, I'm not talking anybody out of using it. I'm not talking people out of using it because, oh, you just don't have the discipline and you can't. I even pissed off somebody who had an eating disorder. He lit me up in the comments because he said that you're not a real, I think Andrew said, you're not a real bodybuilder if you can't handle hunger. So he got really offended by that, which only points to the fact that he's using that compound because there's a lack of control. And I understand eating disorders, I think, but the reality is we're not having a podcast over eating disorders. We're having a podcast over a compound, whether it's with you or on my show or Blood, Sweat, and Gear, about how it relates to bodybuilders who are trying to maximize every ounce of muscle they can and get lean at the same time. So do your Retta. Anybody I'm not saying don't do your Retta. I'm saying if you find that it's not working very well, remember what I said, because that longer term use, I think people are going to see it, gear or no gear.
I've just realized that some of the genetic elites, as you say, was really loud about it, and then he just silent about it. I've just realized that.
Well, if you're talking about one person, that one person could be an example, but he's not the only one.
Yeah. I do believe that you know who I'm thinking about, because but it is like the probably the one which most of the guys starting to using it, because even my clients wanted to use it because of him. Not
That
only
could be,
that,
yeah.
but all the peptides, like rather
Mhm.
than just they are asking me why we are using clan if we can use like mod C, for example.
Right.
Yeah, and stuff like that. Because so that was obvious, yeah. And they
Yep.
obviously wanted to use like other things that that person use and stuff like that. But I am not blaming him because like everyone just follow into the wagon, and
Sure.
that's obvious because if something new is just popped up, you just don't want to get like miss on that because
Absolutely.
yeah.
I felt the same way. And I was just as starstruck by it, and the reaction and the response that I had to it, I was blown away. I own it. I mean, I absolutely did. There's another thing to mention with it too. The older demographic when it comes to masters competitors have to be very, very careful because of the increased distension. One of the things that I battled with, and I've always had distension issues. This year was, it was insane. It was out of control. It would take me 4 to 5 days to get back after a high carb day to the point where my midsection was under control again. And I'm talking to the point where I wouldn't even go to the pool during prep unless it was a day or two before another high carb day. And that is something I had never experienced before. And then I ended up having to battle with when I was loading prior to the show because that volume of food was just, I mean, I would be pregnant before I go to bed. Then I wake up in the morning and go, okay, I'm good now. Let's do it. Let's do it all over again. It obviously with the decrease of, the decreased rate of gastric emptying, you're keeping that food in your stomach longer. And what's funny is I only cut it a couple months ago. And since I did, I actually got leaner. Food is moving through me quicker. I'm coming into a diet or dieting phase where I'm in a deficit. So insulin sensitivity, people will say or could say, well, you could potentially not be as insulin sensitive. I'm coming into a deficit. I'm going to maintain sensitivity. So I'm not worried about that. And things are going relatively well now without it, arguably better. I mean, I laughed and said my lifting belt was on the notch 2 weeks ago and that would be 17 weeks out that it was at 4 weeks out. I'm not as lean, but the midsection is smaller and at that same weight. So food is moving through me, and I actually invite the hunger. I'm not starving. I've never really had much of an issue with massive hunger throughout maybe it's because I've been wired that way for so long. I don't really know, but I don't have that type of issue. I almost like the hunger. In fact, one of the things I don't like about the off season and being in a growth phase when I was younger is I just hated that feeling of and just being so heavy and feeling lethargic and being full all the time and having to shit 5 times a day and burping and it just there may be somebody going, well, your digestion was out of it. We need to maximize your digestion and get your gut biome. Yeah, okay, fair enough. But the point is back then that gut biome thing was not an issue. You fed yourself and you arguably overfed yourself to push gains and it worked. And then you just got lean and paid the price during the cut phase and the prep phase. So there's just a lot there to unwrap with Retta. There's a lot, and we're going to learn a lot more.
Can I just ask what dose you've run?
Yeah, I started and stayed at the same dose of 1.7 mg.
So low doses.
A year, very low. In fact, as I got into the prep and I started noticing the distension early, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll cut it back a little bit. And I was a little anxious because I was still on board with it. Well, it's probably keeping, the gastric emptying being slower is keeping me fuller. And I started cutting it back and I'm like, no difference. So I got down to maybe, let's see, I ended up this year, just 2 or 3 months ago, I tapered it down slowly to like 0.7 mg. And then I was just to the point where I'm like, I don't see much difference now. So am I really benefiting from it? I'm like, I probably am a little bit. I'm just going to cut it. And I just felt so much better when I finally cut it. So I'm keeping it out. Now, I will tell you, as far as dosages with my clients over the last year, so I have found this. I'm guessing 90% of my client base, excuse me, is under 2 milligram. I'd say 50% of that 90% is at about 1 mg, and they're responding really well to it. Here's what's important. The 10% that is above 2 mg, they're maybe at 4, or maybe they've gone to 6. They don't respond very well to it at all. So what I'm saying is these high dosages don't work for shit. That's just my experience. People may see it, but I don't see it.
I seen the huge differentiate between the people when it comes to the response. For example, I am a really low responder to that, to be honest. I don't really remember what was I was the highest. I believe 6 milligrams, and it wasn't even suppressed my appetite almost at all. And the gut mortality was kind of same. I don't feel a much of a difference. And one of my client used exact the same brand, and 0.5 milligrams make him puke.
Oh,
So that was when I heard that, I couldn't believe him. I was asking him if he measured it correctly, because that was like almost impossible for me. 0.5 milligram is like nothing.
right.
And highest my clients I ever have was on 6 milligrams, just because he signed with me doing the 6 milligrams. So he just stays there, but never go higher. I believe, if I am not correct, maybe someone can just correct me in the comments if watching. I don't believe I ever go higher than 2 milligrams with anyone, to be honest. And I do like it, even in the beginning of the off season, but I've used as low as 0.25 mg.
Okay.
I get that from the Dominic Cusa, because he and a couple of guys oh my god, I just can't remember what was Hunter. I can't remember the name of that guy right now, but never mind. Believe that it really works on that, the better lipids, like restoring a better insulin sensitivity and stuff like that, even on that low of a dose. Because I was never a fan of using it when it comes to the appetite suppressed, because I do believe that tirzepatide works far better than that, like than Retta in that regard. So if someone really needs to blunt their appetite, I would really rather use tirzepatide than Retatrutide in that regard. So, but I didn't know about that when it comes to that, like what you just said, and it's probably makes sense. And probably we're gonna see it happens like on a bigger scale in the next couple of years, like I said.
Hey, we'll find out if I'm full of shit or not, right? I mean, I put it out there, and I wouldn't put that out there if I had any questions about it. I'm not. The other thing I want to be careful with is, like I said, and I want to be clear on this, I'm not saying that it's going to turn out to be junk and that it's not going to have its place. I just think it's going to be incredibly limited. And I think even like in the off season, it could be one of those things for 4 to 6 weeks that helps you during a mini cut to resensitize or whatever. But I mean, if you're trying to push food in the off season, it's the last, people are using it because I want to stay leaner, it'll keep me leaner. Well, it's also going to, I have a client who's literally burping up food, and it's just getting in the way. It's this giant obstacle of being able to force the food that he needs to be able to grow. And he's relatively lean anyway. So, one of his concerns was, well, I don't want the hunger to be out of control, because then I might go off. You're eating so much food and you're so full anyway. Like, how are you going to get extra food in there? It's okay to have that hunger signal. And the other part that I don't want to leave out, or that I don't want to focus on, is I'm seeing that with the Retta, the insulin, if you're using insulin, it's not having the same impact with the insulin from a fullness standpoint. And that's one of the things that just stood out so dramatically, and I just couldn't figure it out, was I'm just so much fuller at the same weight a year prior. Like it was a complete dramatically difference. It fuller, and then when it got to my legs, the legs were just inch and a half, maybe 2 inches. It was dramatically different. So I look at it this way: if I go through this cut phase without it, and I don't look any different, and I don't gain any fullness from not using it or gain any size, okay, I'll raise a white flag and go, yeah, okay, it didn't work. But again, I'm seeing a lot of these same things in the earlier stages with other clients and other people. I mean, I got a lot of friends in the industry too, trainers, competitors, and they're saying there may be some truth to this. So we'll see how it plays out. And at the end of the year, there may be a thread that says Skip, he was full of shit. He's the only one. He's too old. That's why he sucks.
So one thing you definitely need to do, guys, if you are not following Skip just right now, go in the description down below when you find his YouTube channel, and probably maybe soon he just gonna prepare for us a little bit of like explanation why you should or should not use the Retta in his long uh, studying that he's just preparing in the shadows of his apartments. so so thank you, Skip, for today. And if you find time in the future, I would really love you to invite you one more time just to talk about the contest prep and how do you set up the peak week and what you want to do if we're doing back-to-back shows and stuff like that, and most probably importantly what to do after show, because everyone know how hard it can be for the bodybuilders to get off the show and have almost no idea what to do after that. So for all of the guys who are stick with us to the end to this podcast, like I said, all of the details, codes, and everything that you can find Skip is gonna be listed in the description down below. And if for some reason you're just living under the rock and don't know Skip but know my channel, you definitely should change the sources of the internet you are using, because this is not the proper one. But at least you just know him right now. So yeah, so that's great. So thank you once again, and
thank you.
If you have anything to add, this is your time.
I've said so much in the last 2 hours. I really don't have anything to add, but I do want to thank you for allowing me to come on and give my opinions. And like I said, we'll see if I'm full of shit.
Thank you, and see you.
Thank you.